Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and today it's my pleasure to bring you an interview with Catalina, partner of Fiscal Fitness Clubs, a fee-only financial planning firm with offices in Colorado and Florida. I had several listeners tell me that they spoke with Kat at XYPN 16 and that I had to have her on the show ASAP. So here she is, and I will tell you, I can see why they pushed me so hard. I didn't realize just how amazing her story is. Kat immigrated to the U.S. as a child and was the first of her family to learn English. This meant she was responsible for making the phone calls necessary to help keep the household running, like calling the electric company, and taught her early on how money and household finances really work. One topic, though, that came up on this interview was her experience dealing with sexual harassment and discrimination since becoming a financial planner. It's something that just absolutely makes my blood boil, but hopefully her sharing her story will help bring some awareness to the issues that women are dealing with in financial planning. Now, Kat has had an absolutely incredible journey and is now on her way, along with her business partner, Carol, to building a firm in a completely non-traditional way that will accomplish their goal of helping people better manage their finances. Her story is one of both hardship and hope, so I know this is an interview you're going to want to listen to all the way to the end. As always, you can find any additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/71. In addition to the typical resources, though, you'll find a link to our recently launched book co-authored by Kitsis and myself titled The Monthly Retainer Model, What It Is, Why It Works, and How to Implement It in Your Firm. FICOM Partners is an integrated communications firm working exclusively in the financial service industry. Their clients are technology providers, RIAs, and financial advisors just like you. Now, FICOM understands that integrated communications sounds about as exciting as running the switchboard at Sterling Cooper Draper Price, but it's actually pretty cool. They've built their business on three fundamental elements of connecting with people: creative, marketing, and PR. And that connection, that opportunity to tell your unique, this is who I am, this is why I'm passionate about what I do, and this is how I can help you story is what FICOM cares about above all. They achieve this by expertly blending the art of expression with the science of their proprietary processes. To learn more, visit ficompartners.com/XYPN radio. And remember, like the Demogorgon, FICOM has two M's. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. You can interact with other listeners, ask guest questions, and more. Without further ado, here's my interview with Kat. Hey, Kat, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Well, thank you, Alan. It's my absolute pleasure and a little bit of a dream that just came true to be on your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. You have been highly requested. Your name has come up a couple of times. And then after XYPN 16, I think I got 3 or 4 emails from other members that were at the conference that said, hey, you got to have Catalina on to tell her story because it's awesome. So you were highly requested. So no pressure.
I'm honored. Whoever they are, I'll buy them a coffee at the next conference.
So I guess just to kick things off, how did you, I guess what has been your career path? Because my understanding is you haven't always been a financial planner. So I guess what did you kind of go to school for and what was your first career phase out of school?
Sure. I started with a degree in physical education. I always loved fitness. I grew up doing sports and it was just part of my lifestyle. And I just didn't see anything else in my future but fitness. And so I was a physical education teacher, elementary, for about 7 years. And then I decided that living under the sun for 9 hours a day was not going to be healthy for the rest of my life. Although I loved kids and I just had a great time working with them. I went back to school to get my master's degree in sport management. And it was during that time that the university that I went to school at, where I was a student athlete and I had done my undergrad at, asked me to become their wellness coordinator for the university. And I said, yes, of course, I'd love to do that. It'll take me out of the sun. And so I did that for another 7 years. And during the time of being a physical education teacher and a wellness coordinator at Barry University, I also started a business called Fitness for Kids, which was a summer camp. And I did that for 16 years. So when I was coming to the end of, or what I would say a transition towards the end of my career at the university, I started a PhD program in higher education and leadership, and actually did some work abroad using sport as a vehicle for positive social change. And we were traveling and doing partnerships with other universities to collect data and do research for my dissertation. And that took me to South Africa. I met some amazing people, was doing some great projects, and was now transferred to the University of Pretoria and doing my PhD there. And when I came back to the States, it just so happened that they made the CFP coursework available through the Adult and Continuing Education program. And being that I worked at a university, one of the benefits was that you or anyone in your family could take courses for free. And I got on the phone and I called my husband and I said, Michael, you have to take these classes. They sound like so much fun. And he's like, oh no, what are you getting me into now? And I'm like, no, you have to take the classes because I'm doing my PhD and I don't have time to do them. So can you take them? And being the great husband that he is and the amazing sport that he is, he started taking the classes. And he stuck with them up until the capstone class. And it turned out, on a personal note, my husband's from Boston and the professor was from Boston. So that's the only reason why he stuck around, because they got to talk about the Patriots and the Red Sox. So when he got to the capstone class, my husband had hurt his hand. And I said, hey, Michael, I'll go to your class and take notes for you. I'm a total dork. I love school and punishment. So I'll go take your classes. So I took the class, I took notes, and I just fell in love with the content. I was like, why isn't this being taught to everyone? And why hasn't this been accessible to people like me? Doing the case analysis and seeing the integration of the different aspects of financial planning. I fell in love with it. And when I finished that day, I came home and I said, Michael, you have to ask your professor if I could just sit in the class. I just want to listen. I want to ask any questions. And in exchange, I'll do all your homework for you. I hope my professor's not listening. And, of course, Michael's like, yes, sure, I'll ask. And he did. He asked and the professor said yes. And that was in the summer of 2011. And it was also during the time that I was writing my dissertation proposal. And, I came at a crossroads, because I fell in love with it and I felt a pull towards, becoming a financial planner. I remember, having memories as a child coming to the US from Colombia, I'm South American. And feeling, the pain and frustration of coming into a new country and not knowing the language. And on top of that, not understanding how the financial systems work. That was really difficult. My mom came here as a divorced woman with 3 children. I was the youngest of the 3. And my older brothers went to work to supplement my mom's income. And because I learned English first, it was my job to write the checks out, interpret for my mom and translate the bills that came in, call the power company and get our things on or off. So I understood very early on, and this is when I was about 9 years old.
Wow.
So I saw my mom in so much pain and so frustrated that I'm like, this is never going to happen to me. I never want to experience this as an adult because it's too painful as a kid. So I don't want that in my life. And when I was in this class, I was like, all I could think of is that little kid and all those people that just don't understand financial planning and how to manage to be successful. And I felt like, hey, somebody has to do something about this. And I want to be that somebody, at least where I'm at. What happened after that is that I dropped out of my PhD program. I did receive a bit of a backlash from my dissertation chair and my professors because the goal was that I was tracking to be a professor. So it was tough. It was hard. It felt pretty lonely for a while there. But in August of 2011, I enlisted in the classes, and that took me about a year to complete all the CFP classes.
So, Kat, I have to say, many people have a very interesting path into financial planning, and you may take the cake for the most random way that you discovered financial planning. I absolutely love it. And it's amazing to me, and the part of your story that resonates with me, because this was kind of how I found financial planning, and that is once you see it, you just fall in love with it. And there's just something about it, and it's hard to explain why, but you were in that capstone class. Mine was, I accidentally took the intro to financial planning class. And you just realize, I guess to the question that you asked, which is what I asked myself, is why didn't we get this in high school? Like, why didn't we get this in college? And you come from a background that's even one step further removed in that, coming in and trying to learn all of the institution of how the U.S. does personal finance, and then get into the issue of actual behavior and, educating on the basics and things like that. Like, you've had to come a long way in order to really understand the system, which I think is huge. And it probably resonates with your client base.
Yeah. I think that there are a lot of people out there who are maybe reluctant to talk about the painful experiences that they've had with money and how they grew up. And it does impact the way that we make decisions now. Like I act from a safety and security place, because I know what it's like not to have anything and to be very limited with your resources. And then, it helps to be able to tell your story to your clients because they feel like you're a human.
Right.
And you have feelings and you've experienced some challenges. So I would say initially, it wasn't something that I shared often, but now I see the importance of saying, hey, even though I have this education and I can help you, I know what it's like not to know. So I want only the best for you because I don't want you to feel that pain.
That speaks to your approach to financial planning. And this is something that probably many of us take for granted is our approach, because I know some advisors that say, like, I want to be the one with the nicest car and a jet airplane because I want to prove that, I'm rich because I can do this for myself. And so I want the clients that are attracted to that. And you're coming from a much more, human approach, I would say, to say, look, I've been there. I've experienced hardship too. I'm learning while you learn. I'm not perfect. I don't have the perfect balance sheet, but I am an expert in this because I chose to go become an expert, in this topic. And just for listeners to understand, if you haven't been through to get your doctorate, and I obviously have not, but I watched this process when I was in grad school. Getting your doctorate is a huge decision, but the point that you were at with that dissertation proposal, that is a big deal to get through the proposal. But once you're done with that, then you actually have to write the whole dissertation. So you were probably 2 years out from getting your doctorate. So it's not like you left at the last minute. You were kind of leaving at a pretty good crux point, kind of a good timing, if you will. It makes sense that that's kind of when everyone seems to evaluate, like, is this really for me? And you made the decision that it wasn't, even though you were, partially through the program. I'm sure that was a tough decision to make, but an important time to make that decision.
Yeah, it was actually closer. I was a year out.
Oh,
so
okay.
if I could have written the proposal, I already had all of the locations where research was going to begin, and it was already starting because I had designed a program that could be used internationally with other sport managers at other universities. So it was all set up already. So you're right. To make that decision and walk away from that was difficult. The transition into this profession meant that I had to find, in a way, a new identity and a new group to relate to, because I was well respected in what I did. I was doing something that was innovative and people were excited about it. So walking away meant walking away from a career that I had built, and it had taken me a long time to get there.
So why walk away? I mean, you just named all the reasons why you should not have made the decision. I mean, what was it about financial planning and about what you saw on this side of the fence that made you want to walk away from all that and become a financial planner?
Just like in sport, I was using sport as a vehicle for positive social change. So it was beyond the sport activity. It was about what skills and what values and what can we teach through sport being the carrot. I see similar, correlation to using money for this. And I felt that it was important for somebody who had the passion and the endurance and had run a business in the past to give it a shot. And especially because I am an immigrant, I felt in the South Florida area where I live at, that it was important for somebody to, and I'm not saying that I'm the only one doing this and I'm so wonderful. I just felt that I had the margin in my life to do it. And I wanted to do it because for me, this is a calling. And that's why I walked away. I mean, I felt strongly that it was a calling. I couldn't get it out of my head. I could not get it out of my head. And it was the most bizarre thing. I just feel I have to do it. And I felt that way at that moment. So I'm like, I have to do this.
I think calling is such a good word for it, because I think some of us, end up in jobs that it's like 75% of Americans would change jobs if they felt like they could. Most people end up in a job because it's a job, and you made the decision to chase a calling and maybe, for lack of a better term, a higher purpose than just, I want to help people with their money. It's more than that. And I think a lot of planners out there feel that way. And even some folks, and we can dig into this a little bit later, but even some folks that are working inside of firms with clients that, they felt this calling to financial planning, and then they end up in the wrong style of firm, working with clients that they're not working with clients that necessarily they were called to work with. And, whether that be they wanted to work with their peers, or they wanted to work with folks that were living in poverty, or that needed, true literacy and education, whatever that thing is that pulled them into financial planning. And yet they got kind of stuck working with older rich people. And maybe that wasn't what they got into this business to do. So you make the decision that you're going to become a financial planner. So did you then enroll at the university in CFP courses?
Yeah. So in August of 2011, I enrolled in the Foundations for Financial Planning, and I absolutely loved it. I did all my homework. So I loved it. And at that time, my professor was the president of the FPA at the local chapter. And he had mentioned, the professional organization. And that was something, that I knew from my previous career that was important to become part of. And so I joined, and I became, a little bit more involved with the Women in Finance group at the national level. And at that time, they were designing the pilot mentorship program that was to be launched in January of 2012. And I'm like, well, I worked at a university. I completely get it. I know the importance of mentorship. And when they came out, I applied for it. I looked up a few people, which was really weird because I didn't know anybody in the industry. So what are the odds that I would find someone that I could match with? Because they would say, okay, pick the 3 people and send them an email. I'm like, okay, sure.
Now, just to clarify, this is through the National FPA. I don't know if I'm familiar with this program, but they rolled out a Women in Finance mentorship program at National FPA, or was this through like CFP board?
National FPA. So they started it with the Women in Finance group as a pilot. Now it's for everyone, but at that time it was with that group that they were trying it out. And so, I reached out to 3 individuals, and one of them was Carol Craigie. And simply because her company was called Fiscal Fitness Clubs. And
so you were attracted to that with your sports background.
Right. I'm like, it has the word fitness in it. I want her to be my mentor. Not knowing anything really about Carol. I mean, obviously you read her resume and whatever she's put on FPA, but I had never met her before. And I had to pick 2 other people. And so it turns out that the stars were aligned. She chooses me, and I'm like, yay, and sends me an email saying, hey, Kat, I'd like to be your mentor, and I know we're supposed to start like at the end of January, but why wait until then? Why don't we just start now? I'm like, what? Okay. Sure. I'm all for that. So that was the transition into getting more involved with the professional organization and then meeting Carol.
So I want to kind of finish talking about kind of a little bit of your path, but I want to come back to this topic of mentorship, because I think this is huge and a topic that has come up a lot of times inside our VIP community for XYPN Radio, as well as just at the conference and within the organization itself. So You got matched up with Carol when you were kind of getting into CFP coursework. Were you working at the time while going through CFP, or did you just kind of take a break and just focus on crushing the CFP coursework?
Yeah. So of course, I think I was a bit savvy in that I took a leave of absence from the university. So I still had my job guaranteed at the end of this transition of taking all the courses, because I just wanted to get through them as quickly as possible. And if I didn't see myself continuing, then I had my job in August. I could go back to work with no problem.
That's huge.
So I was a bit strategic, the planner in me.
Sure.
Right. So I met Carol during my second class, and she helped me tremendously through that. And then I ran my summer camp that year. And then I ended up with a job in August of 2012.
So was that job in financial planning?
Yes, it was at a fee-only financial planning firm.
Okay. So you were in your second class in January. You got probably through another class or two of the CFP coursework, did the summer camp, and then in August of 2012 started in a actual financial planning firm.
Yes.
Okay. So what was your position in that firm?
So I was the coordinator of financial planning.
Okay. And financial planning coordinator, I don't know, that's kind of a paraplanner style position. Everyone uses a different title, but you were kind of coordinating the various aspects of planning.
Yes. So my job was to update the client's financial plans every year. We had them all on a schedule based on their anniversary of when they signed up as clients. And my job was to go back and make sure that I updated any, life events that had happened to them, update their net worth statement, look up at their investments, see if there were any opportunities for them to either refinance their home or do different things, and then present this to the lead financial planner, and then send it to the clients for approval and speak with them to see if anything was missing.
All right. That's a pretty big responsibility for a new planner. I mean, that sounds like you were doing a lot more than what a traditional paraplanner would be doing. So
yes, I think so.
Yeah. And probably a lot of that is, taking it upon yourself, since you're obviously high speed. Just for the benefit of the career changers out there, how did you find this job? I mean, and what was that conversation like, explaining your career path and why you wanted to get into financial planning?
Sure. So one of the things that I understood well was the importance of being part of the association in my local chapter. And one of the things that Carol coached me through is to become part of like either a subcommittee or a committee, something that I could contribute to. And so I did that. I became part of the membership committee, which got me really involved with the chapter's executive director. And it was through her that I was introduced to the owner of this firm. So I was already doing volunteer work and helping them out and giving them an opportunity to get to know me better. And that's how I got connected.
I love it. We so push, on this show especially, but we push getting involved. And I don't think folks realize just how small the world of financial planning really is. And just getting involved in a committee, one, it gives you the opportunity to give back to the profession that we're all looking to build and looking to help. But, organizations like the FPA, like NAPA, they don't run without volunteers. The volunteers are the ones that really move things forward. They all have those organizations have a staff that ultimately provide resources and support, but they need volunteers. And so by getting involved, I think a couple of things. One, you're showcasing that you care, that you believe in this profession more so than just, kind of continuing on your daily life and then going home after work. But also you get to meet really awesome people who know really awesome people. And so, if you meet 5 or 6 committee members, they know hundreds of advisors. And so, they can make these introductions. In that introduction is probably a lot stronger than, you randomly calling this planner because you heard maybe they were hiring and trying to interview for a position. You got a really awesome, warm introduction from, the committee member that you were working with.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would recommend that to everybody out there. I mean, just because, one, I feel that it's important to give back, like you mentioned. I think that we have a responsibility, not just to take from our profession, but to contribute to it. And 2, like you said, you get to meet some really interesting people and help out in projects that they're short on, because they are volunteers and people are pulled in so many different directions. And if you are able to dedicate, a little bit of time, anybody in any chapter would be so grateful for that contribution.
Yeah, I think they rarely tell volunteers they don't have a place for them. If you want to help,
right.
They will find a place for you. And it's also just kind of cool, in my opinion, is to get in there and kind of see how things work, understand how the committees work, how the different planners come together to make things happen. If you can get involved in a conference planning committee, like to understand how that whole process looks. It gave me a strong appreciation when I was attending conferences to actually see how one was run and that sort of thing. And especially now that we actually have to, that we put on an entire conference. But okay, so you get that job as kind of the client service coordinator or the planning coordinator. And then how long were you at that firm and how did your role change while you were there?
Well, I was only there for almost 3 months.
Okay.
I knew very quickly that was not the kind of environment I wanted to be in. Although it was a fee-only firm, the clients that we were seeing were not really the clients that I saw myself working with long-term.
Sure.
And, I believe that it's important to just be honest with people. I really thought it would be a great match and I wanted it to work, but I didn't see myself there for the next 10 years. And so I didn't want to prolong it for the firm owner. I know how challenging it is to find the right people and to train individuals, and I just didn't want to continue with that commitment. So I resigned from the position, which people also told me it was crazy.
Yeah, you had the golden ticket. How could you ever walk away from the golden ticket? Don't you love that?
Yeah. I guess I've walked away from a few. Alan, it has to do with also knowing yourself, and knowing what is a good match and understanding, if you have a backup plan and you do have the margin in your life, it's a lot easier to make these decisions.
So define margin. You've said that now twice. So what do you mean whenever you say to have margin in your life?
I'm talking about financial margin and also having the support group around you that will help you during these transitions that could be challenging. So, I had already planned, since I run a business on top of running, working at the university, financially, I had already put away money so that I could make this transition. So I knew that financially I could sustain myself. On top of that, my husband and I are pretty conscientious about the way that we manage money, and we live on one income, which is his income. And my money, I'm not going to say my money was for fun, my money's for saving.
Right.
But, honestly, I could not have done it without my husband, to be honest. All credit goes to Michael because he was very supportive in all these transitions. And we had the financial means to do it. It wasn't like, oh, if I left this job, then we won't be able to make the car payment next month. It's like, no, you have the financial margin to have the freedom to make these decisions.
I love that because it's so critical. It wasn't like you were sitting there saying, okay, well, I have to go get a job in order to make ends meet. And then you end up in a job that's not the right fit long term. And then you're stuck because you have to be there in order to make enough money in order to make ends meet. You gave yourself that financial flexibility or that margin in order to, be able to make this what you needed it to be to fulfill yourself. Because have you ever taken like the Colby personality exam?
I did.
I bet you're like an 8 quick start.
I don't remember my results. I'll send them to you.
You have to be. I don't meet very many people that are as high a quick start as I am. And you may be as high, if not higher, which is awesome. And if you've never taken the Colby, it's basically how you go into action. And it's kind of your natural state. We could have an expert on to actually talk more about it. But one of the measures is if you're a fact finder, do you dig in and get all the facts? Do you not? Are you somewhere in between? But quick start is one of them. And how fast do you go into action? And for some folks, they contemplate for a really long time before they make a move on anything. And then for some of us, we tend to process very quickly and act very quickly in a way that it can look rash. Leaving a job after 3 months to almost everyone looks rash and irresponsible, but to the person doing it and to your support group, it was not a rash decision. They trust that you've got a good head on your shoulders and you've thought this through and you've realized that once you've made that decision, if you were to stay there, you would just implode because you already know the decision you're ready to make and it's just hard to sit around and wait for it. So I am not surprised that you made it 3 months before deciding to make a change. And so what was kind of the next phase for you after that?
Yeah. So the next phase, I got a job at a credit union, working in their finance investments department. And, one thing that they don't teach you in school is the different business models.
It's so true.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so you learn the hard way. And it's actually too much of a hard way. I think that people cannot always afford to do what I did. And so they pay for it financially and emotionally if they have to find this out on their own. I didn't know that the primary focus was selling annuities. All I knew was that this is a credit union and we care about the members and we want to provide a good service. And I was sold on all that because those are my values.
Sure.
And so I started working there and I just got hit by a reality that I was not aware of. It was about, obviously I had to get my Series 7 and pass other licensing exams. And then, the primary focus was to sell annuities. And I just felt like this was so wrong. Like it was not part of the idealistic financial planning world that I had experienced in my classwork. And I'm like, what are we doing? This is terrible. And on top of that, to bring up another subject that I don't know if you discuss much, but I grew up in sports and I was the beneficiary of Title IX, where women began to be included in sports and we got uniforms and locker rooms and we actually had our own bus to take us to the venue. And by the time I got into sports, it was somewhat equalized. Mm-hmm. And when I entered this profession and worked there, I was like, the men were not very welcoming. And I was,
to say the least.
Yeah. And I was harassed, I was in awe. Like some of the things the men said to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I've worked in sports. I've been around athletes my whole life and I've never been treated this way before by men. I can't believe this exists. What world am I in?
So let me ask you, was it sexual harassment or is it more like harassment around your skill set and ability as a woman to be a financial planner, or both?
Both. Starting on the first,
makes my blood boil.
Yeah. On the first day it started. Like one guy asked me how old I was and I was like, why is that an issue? And he goes, oh, you look young for your age. I'm like, okay, thank you. All right. And other things that I don't think I don't want to share on your radio station, but.
Hey, I am happy. And I've actually been having some conversations with XYPN members offline about this, but anyone that wants to share their story of especially women or anyone really that has had a situation where you've been sexually harassed or just harassed for the sake that you're a woman, I want those stories told because, whether it's this podcast or others, I don't think we talk about it enough. And it is an issue that I'm very passionate about because I've watched every time I take my fiance to a conference, some man touches her inappropriately. I mean, literally every conference we go to, someone touches her.
Oh.
And I mean, I've watched a man run his hand up her back under her shirt and things like that. And so
That's
I have seen this. And when you're in that situation, you don't know what to do. Do I start a fight in the middle of a national conference where I'm a sponsor with someone I don't know? So not to rabbit trail too much, but those are stories that are important to share. So share as much as you choose, but I do think it's important to at least that we acknowledge the fact that it is still happening and that, inside of a lot of financial planning firms, it kind of feels like the 60s still.
Yeah, it's, that's the part that I see in this industry that is very backwards still. It saddened me because we have an opportunity through using money as a tool to really enhance people's lives, including the people who are servicing clients. And this type of environment is it scares away, I think, a lot of potentially amazing planners. I know I have to credit the fact that I was in sports and could take like a physical beating and like to exercise to be able to endure the comments. And even though they shook me and I got thoroughly upset, and I even, brought it to my manager and we spoke with the financial planner directly. I mean, even when it was brought up, and this is about another instance, I mean, the confrontation was, oh, it's your fault and you misunderstood. And I'm like, okay. So, I just want to encourage anybody out there who is being, harassed in any way to speak up, even if it feels uncomfortable. And even if the other person negates what they did, because at the very least, you're bringing awareness and it's just not right. It shouldn't happen.
Totally agree. And if you need someone to be on the phone with you, call me. I would love to jump in on that call. You should not, we will do probably a show specifically on this topic, but I haven't come up with the best way to approach it. So maybe this is the best way. It's just to have someone that can speak from personal experience to talk about it, because I often hear like, oh, you need to have thick skin. And thankfully you had thick skin, but you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to have thick skin in order to make it through a day of that sort of thing. Like, it should just be a comfortable working environment, whether it's, I don't know the right terminology here, like very obvious deliberate sexual harassment, or it's just kind of the day-to-day just grind of random comments and random situations and random things being said in meetings, or in comments being made to you. You should be comfortable. So if you are uncomfortable, speak up, say something about it, because I think it's important. Even if your manager doesn't do anything about it, and even if you end up leaving, at least you will begin to put an awareness around that individual or the issue at hand, but particularly that individual, because you may be surprised that people start to notice more things once it's brought to their attention. And, we have a problem in this industry for sure that it's so male dominant, but it's also dominant of a certain personality that kind of was your typical financial planner in the 70s and 80s and 90s, that it was very sales, is very pushy, is very alpha male, very dominant personality. And I think that they tend to think that they can get whatever they want, and women would be on that list. And so anyway, that is certainly not an excuse. I think it's just where our industry came from. And it is just taking a long time to get them out of the industry, because my biggest fear is that we won't do it fast enough, and we're going to lose the cats of the world that didn't, grow up around athletes, and so therefore had a little bit thicker of a skin, or willing to put up with it a little longer. I am convinced that we lose a lot of women from this profession simply because they come in, they see that situation, they go, oh, hell no. And they're gone and they go do something else. So.
Right. And then you tell your husband and he's like, you don't have to do that. Quit tomorrow.
Yep. The husband's going to go up to the office and beat somebody up. Right? I understand. Oh, what a mess. So, okay. So you lasted longer there than most might.
Right.
And so then I guess kind of what was the next phase for you after that?
Yeah. So then I said, okay, I got to change this because I really do want to do financial wellness. And I found a local broker-dealer franchisee that said that they did financial wellness. And I sent them an email. I met with them. I got hired with the understanding that I would become a financial planner, because I was right before I got hired, I was going to be taking my CFP exam. That was not what they had in mind. I mean, they sold me on being able to do that. And then I ended up being the secretary. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is not what I wanted to do. But I did see the value in it. I did see the value in learning the paperwork and a lot of the things that were important to just running the business and the operation. So I always have believed that, you always learn something from any position that you're in. So I wasn't completely upset about it, except that I knew that that was not going to be my future at all. Even after I spoke with him and his partner about that several times. And during that conversation, I was told, hey, but if you do this, we do need to sell annuities, because what's the difference between you doing this, selling the different kinds of shares, and with an annuity, you have a larger payout and this and that. And I'm like, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to do fee only financial planning. And I was doing their financial plans because they did not know how to do them. I was using all of the software.
As the secretary. And outlining how to lead the conversation in the financial planning presentation, and what should come first, second, third, and how to present different solutions. So for me, it was actually a good experience in that sense, but I was disappointed that I was viewed, as a secretary, and now I had the CFP and they didn't have the CFP. Or I passed the exam. I didn't have the designation yet, but I had passed the exam. And so it just wasn't going to work either. So just out of curiosity, do you feel like you were labeled a secretary because of your gender, or was it because of your experience, or they just didn't know what to do with you? Like, was that a derogatory thing, or was it just they didn't know what to do and you just kind of ended up in that position?
Well, so I had approached the firm owner before his secretary resigned, thinking that I would come in and do like a paraplanner position. And then his secretary resigned and he called me and said, hey, I have a position for you, but he didn't call me the secretary or client service associate. When he presented it to me, it was more like, no, you're going to help me with the financial plans and so forth and the financial wellness. I want you to really develop this program. And so I thought, okay, fantastic. I'm going to help with that, not knowing that I would be pigeonholed into that position. So I really can't tell you what their thought process was. To be honest, I don't think it's fair for me to assume what they were thinking. All I know is that while I was in that position, I took advantage of all the learning opportunities that they had because they had an amazing platform and amazing resources. But I knew with this group of individuals, it wasn't going to be a long-term experience either.
And it is hard. It doesn't matter if you're basically running the whole office. If you are labeled the secretary, it's hard to move up from that position. Like you said, you get pigeonholed where it's hard to go from being secretary to associate advisor to advisor because you're kind of like always viewed as the secretary. I mean, it's hard enough to move up from associate advisor to lead advisor, but to make a move, no matter the role you play, just titles do actually matter. And just that's a tough transition for clients as well as for other members of the firm to treat you as an equal when they've viewed you as, an administrative assistant, basically.
Yeah, I think it's tough. And it was tough for me because I had owned a business for 16 years. I ran programs, at the university level and at the international level. I was working with researchers, I'm not saying that was below me. I don't want to say that, but I knew that wasn't going to be a permanent position for me. And if they were not ready to make that path for me, then I was going to go make it for myself because I couldn't wait for them to make a decision too long.
And this whole time, have you maintained your relationship with Carol through this process?
Yes. So she's been incredible because she coached me through all of it. It was amazing. And, I do thank you for bringing her up again because it was her mentorship and pointers as to how to address certain situations that really helped me, graciously manage myself through a lot of it as well. How do you bring up these tough conversations? How do you ask for what you want and also present solutions at the same time to make it easier for the other person to move forward in the direction that you like to move into? So she coached me. And I have to tell you, which this is the funny part, is that when Carol was my mentor, or when she started as my mentor, we were supposed to have a 6-month engagement. And we met every 2 weeks. We spoke by phone. And at the end of the 6 months, this was in January. So I was getting ready to finish my CFP coursework. I said to her, okay, Carol, I'm sorry, it's 6 months. I guess we have to end the engagement because that's what the paperwork says. And she's like, no, we don't have to do that. I'm like, yes, awesome. And so, but I had already been asking her from the beginning, jokingly. And then towards the middle, I said, Carol, honestly, what I want to do is work with you because she had developed Fiscal Fitness Clubs as this financial wellness program. And that was really what I wanted to do. But she had retired and then gone into semi-retirement working at the College for Financial Planning, teaching classes, writing 2 textbooks for them. And through this whole process, we're still in communication. And I'm teasing her and saying, Carol, I want to work with you. I don't want to work with anybody else. I already know what I want. And her saying, Kat, I'm not ready. I can't pay you. And me saying, I don't care. You don't have to pay me. We'll build a business. And Alan, I have to tell you, so at the end of that stint, right, at the broker dealer was when I found out about XYPN.
Oh, wow.
And I called you, or no, you called me. We set up a time. And I think it was like a Monday or something, a Monday or a Tuesday. And you and I are talking, we're talking. And you say to me, Kat, what do you have to lose? Which I think is a great line, right? And I said, you're right. What do I have to lose? I don't want to be there. And then I called Carol the next day. I think that was a Wednesday. And I said, Carol, what I want is not at this broker dealer. And she says to me, so what do you want? And I said, I've told you before, what I want is to start my own business and I want to work with you. And there was like a 10-second delay. No answer from Carol. It felt like 20 hours. And then she's like, okay. And I'm like, what? All right, we're doing it. I'm going to schedule a call with Alan. And so I think we scheduled a call with you like a week later. But the next day, I go to work. This person presents something that is completely unethical for me to do, which I'm like, yep, you solidified my decision. Thank you very much. I don't want to be here anymore. I come home. I tell my husband. He says, you can resign today if you want. I'm like, fantastic. I wrote my letter. I go there with my husband and I hand the letter to the guy. And he says, oh, Kat, I'm so glad that you're here. I have another financial plan for us to do. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I'm resigning. Here you go. This is not going to work out.
Oh, I love it.
And then we call you. We speak with you. And we're like, okay, we're doing this. We're so doing this. Carol's on board. And then we sign up with you guys. And I tell Carol, okay, well, I know you want to do this, but I have to see you in person. So I am flying to Colorado because I have to look you in the face and you need to tell me you really want to do this. So that was June 1st. I landed 2015 at her house. June 2nd, we're signed up with XYPN.
Oh my goodness. What a crazy couple of years for you. That is so amazing that it has kind of culminated into this. So I don't want to lose this. I want to kind of be sure we emphasize the fact of just how critical having a mentor was here. Because Carol has been in the industry for a while. So whether she's older than you or not, she at least had a couple decades, right, of experience in the industry before you two met. So she was very well positioned to be a mentor.
Absolutely, over 30 years. And she also served as the National Director of Financial Planning for Wells Fargo and key banks. So she was already mentoring for a very long time financial planners and really bringing in the concept of like holistic financial planning, not just investing.
And it is just so important to recognize the value that brings both ways. I mean, it's not just Carol benefiting you, but you benefiting Carol and probably you can speak to, but probably pushing her a little bit to move this idea forward and to get things rolling in the direction that you were both kind of wanting to go. But for the listeners that are out there that are trying to figure out what's next, I know we push study groups and mastermind groups really heavily. And I do think that's extremely important. I think that absolutely do that. But also, if you can find someone who can serve as a mentor, who can serve as your kind of more experienced liaison, the person to call to say, hey, I'm having this problem, and they understand, they've been there, they've done that, and can walk you through the different phases of your career, because it's so powerful to have that person. Mine was my first boss, Rick Kaler. Anytime I've ever had a problem, I can call Rick and say like, hey, dude, I'm facing the situation. He's like, yep, it's not a new one. Like, we've been dealing with this for 30 years. I'm like, all right, well, I don't know if it makes me feel better or not, but it's good to know it can give me guidance, and same for you. So I don't know, kind of circling back too on the concept of just how backwards our profession seems to be when it comes to women and people of color, and just becoming something other than a bunch of old white guys that get together at what appears to be geriatric conventions with national conferences. But one of the ways to solve some of that problem that has been presented is mentorship. And I don't know what that looks like or how to best do it. This is not my area of expertise, but I think it's huge that if you are in the profession, either look for someone that can help, and also like be the person who can help, because even if you're only 3 or 5 years into the profession, like you can help someone that's new getting in. So find a mentor, but also find a mentee, and try to do both. So absolutely, that is my rant and my soapbox.
Yeah. And the FPA has really done a good job in developing this program. I mean, they started it and they have been doing it every year and opening it up for people to join. And, there are some wonderful, wonderful people out there, so even though I've highlighted some uncomfortable situations that I went through trying to find the best fit for my personality and my values. I mean, I've met some really amazing people, planners who really do have a vision for growing the industry and passing this knowledge to the next generation, which I think it's critical. And it's one of the, it's part of our mission at Fiscal Fitness Clubs is to create an environment as well. And I guess we'll dig into that a little bit when you're ready, but, preparing future financial planners, providing them mentorship and expediting their learning curve. Because if you're doing this by yourself, I mean, it could be incredibly discouraging and just so challenging. I mean, this is an industry, I came from education and I was in shock, as to how difficult it was to learn how to do it. It wasn't very clear cut. And if it was not for Carol, I would have stopped a long time ago. Honestly, I would have been like, no, I can't do this. I don't know if I have the patience for it. I'll just continue doing my business and that's going to sustain me financially. But yeah, getting a mentor is critical and being a mentee. I asked Carol about this and she's like, no, tell Alan that I get a lot out of it. She goes, she gets the energy and entrepreneurship, because this was an idea that she had for many years, Fiscal Fitness Clubs. She just never launched it. And so I'm like, no, we got to get this off the ground. Let's go. Let's do this.
So let's talk about the business now. So you've partnered with Carol. She's in Colorado. You're in Florida. What is beyond just financial planning? We'll definitely talk about that. But also it sounds like you're trying to build a model to provide mentorship to advisors. So kind of give me the rundown on what it is that you're working on now.
Sure. So our program is a financial wellness program. And that's really what we're focusing on. We aim to make financial planning accessible to the masses. And when I talk about the masses, I'm talking about, for example, some of our clients now that are employers are like a water and sanitation district in Colorado. So their employees have been incentivized because the company pays for a portion of the fees for them to become members of Fiscal Fitness Clubs. Also, we have an electric company, and we just actually did a workshop last week to predominantly man, and we were able to use a lot of the storytelling and football analogies, and fantasy football, by the way, is actually very good for teaching financial concepts.
That is awesome. That's good to know. I love fantasy football.
Yeah. So we use that to talk about, basic financial concepts, cash flow and so forth. And they said that they had fun in a financial education program. So I don't think you hear that too often.
That is not something you hear. Yeah. And not to get derailed, but this is an area where a lot of folks are interested in getting into more workplace type work. How did y'all land those contracts to be able to do that type of work?
So, a lot of it has been through contacts that Carol has had in the past and people that she's met that understand what we're doing now. So we are getting referrals from other financial planners and even people just from walks of life. They say, hey, can you bring this to our company? Can you present it to HR and see if they want it? So that's basically how it's happened. This last company that we landed was because another financial planner who does like workshops only doesn't want to do the continuous coaching that we do. Create the club and keep it going. She just wanted to go do a workshop and that's it. But we take it a step further because our emphasis is on education, coaching, and peer support. So we understand clearly that knowing and doing are two different things. Because if we all did what we know, we'd be in perfect shape and nobody in America would smoke or anything like that. So we've created the resources, all of the classes, and broken financial planning into bite-sized pieces so that people can address each aspect of their financial life, with the handouts from checklists to questionnaires, videos, sample letters that they can use for their insurance company or for estate planning and so forth. So we've spent this past year in developing all of that infrastructure. And so that's what we bring to the companies. So it's not just a one-time contact with the employees. The goal here is to really focus on behavior change. And the only way that you can do that is by having a consistent interaction with a coach. And so what the clubs do is provide that schedule for people to come and meet and chat about different topics as we take them through the curriculum, but also to provide that peer support that and that XYPN does such an awesome job at with their launcher groups is no different, is having a peer group that can support you and hold you accountable to move forward in your, financial goals and make it more fun.
So do you feel like having a background in sports and physical fitness as well as education and learning, I just feel like that's such a leg up when you're building out these courses and doing financial planning, because you've seen behavioral change, right? Like the CFP only teaches us the science of the best answer. It doesn't teach us how to actually get clients to enact change and to provide that support and all of that. So it just seemed, do you agree? Like, has that been beneficial for you to have that kind of background?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's just like going to the gym, right? I mean, I think that you walk in a gym and you see a bunch of machines and a bunch of classes, and you could pay for your membership to go to the gym, but you have no clue what to do once you get there. And that's why most people get on the treadmill,
And they go for 2 weeks and then they go home. Like,
right. Exactly. So, I mean, I learned that part of like behavior modification and coaching and just kind of pacing people through my fitness and wellness background. And so it was a natural fit, doing a financial wellness program, because it's just like any other type of behavior change. And how do you make it so that people have, successes along the way and are encouraged by something that could be very, very scary. Just like going into a gym for the first time, people don't do it because they're scared and it hurts, right? So how do you make financial planning not hurt, and make it fun and achievable and bring peace of mind? And also the other piece is that it relates to your physical health, so for me, that's a no-brainer. If you're stressed out about money, your body is going to tell you some way or another. Either you're not sleeping well, or you're getting headaches or stomach aches or your back aches, so if we could bring some sort of peace to this aspect of your financial wellness, it's a sliver, but your financial life is huge. How does that also impact other aspects of your life in a positive way?
I love it. I think there's such a huge correlation, like you said, in integration of physical health and financial health. And I kind of grew up on the world of mental health and financial health, and we're slowly getting to where folks are experimenting, kind of like y'all are. I mean, in many ways, you're experimenting, you're playing a little bit to try to figure out what works in order to help people really with all three. And you can always go deeper in any one of those areas, but it's so important to recognize that, a negative event in one of those three affects the other two. So I guess kind of as we're sort of wrapping up with our hour of conversation, I feel like we could talk for days on this stuff. It's so interesting, and you just have such an amazing story. This is obviously why everyone has been telling me to have you on the show. What's next for y'all? So you've developed the course, you're starting to implement kind of these clubs. I guess what comes next for the two of you in terms of your planning firm and what you'd like to be doing?
Sure. So we saw the first year as an infrastructure year, and this year now now the end of 2016 and 2017 is marketing and business development. So now that we have things in place, we feel like we could go out and just kind of begin to really talk about what we do, which we're already doing. I mean, we're very strategic in who we need to target in order for us to get into the doors of companies, which are HR professionals. So we've become members of SHRM and of our chapter. I've also become a board member now of my local, I'm the treasurer of the local SHRM chapter here, which is very fitting. So it's business development. And then it's growing our firm, which some of it has happened already. We've brought on a lead coach and an assistant financial coach. One of them is part of my Monday night Power Planners Mastermind from XYPN. And just growing the firm. That's basically where we're at now. We're prepared to just take it out there and talk to people more about what we're doing. And also adding, this is the part of the growth, is adding a part of it where we bring in recently graduated college students in the CFP programs that want to gain experience in a fiduciary platform, and also want to earn their hours supervised by either Carol or myself, because we have our CFPs, and just pass that on to the next generation because we feel like we have a responsibility to our profession to give back in that sense.
That is amazing. I cannot wait to see how that works and what y'all come up with for that, because I think that for any student lucky enough to be able to land that opportunity, that is going to be game changing for their entire career, to be able to get in and see how a real financial planning firm is run. And it's not even fair to call y'all like a next generation firm. Y'all are forming like the next generation of kind of where financial planning is going, I would say. So in closing, if there's one piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give yourself, maybe the cat that's making the transition into financial planning or looking to start your own firm, whatever time period makes sense for you, I guess, what one piece of advice do you wish you could go back and give yourself?
What would I tell myself? To be a little bit more patient, I guess patient in the transition, and maybe not to have gotten so frustrated with knocking my head against the wall in business models that didn't work. I think for individuals who are looking to make this transition, I would just encourage them to go out there and interview planners and find out what their business model is, what their values are, who their real target client is, and what the structure is within the firm. I think I probably would have asked a few more questions than I did at the onset had I known which questions to ask. So that would be the one thing. But honestly, at the time, it was very painful to go through these experiences because I had never experienced failure so much in a row. I felt like, oh my gosh, is this going to work out? I mean, I dropped out of my PhD program for this. This is,
I can only imagine how much of a challenge that was during that time period.
Yeah. But I also would say, I would encourage anybody out there to find an organization such as XYPN, because I felt very welcomed. It was very inclusive, and you definitely expedited the learning curve as far as the operational side and compliance of how to run the business. I felt like I had the skill set to get it done, but I didn't have the details, where to go and how to get it done.
Makes sense.
So definitely partner up with someone that can help launch you and supports you and really cares about you, about your personal growth.
Well, Kat, thank you again. You have just such an amazing story. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share this with listeners. And I am so looking forward to watching your firm evolve and grow and the success that you'll have. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan. And thank you for making this happen. And I really appreciate it. It is true. This was one of my dreams to be on your podcast. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Kat's story is just amazing. She has dealt with hardships few of us have ever known, but has overcome those hurdles to build a successful career for herself and her family. She has had to deal with things in the workplace that just absolutely disgust me, and I hope her sharing this part of her journey will help start the conversation on what we can do to change the industry so it's more welcoming to women. It's sad that it's 2016 and something we're still talking about. But in addition to this, if you don't walk away from this interview with any other takeaways, it's find a mentor and build a mastermind group, because those are two things that Kat, credits her success to and will help launch your career. FICOM would like to state for the record that Demogorgon, unlike their name, has in fact only one M. They did this to illustrate an important aspect of their business, an understanding of compliance in a regulated industry, and never ever wanting to issue a correction to the media. Unlike most communication firms, FICOM understands the challenges you face connecting with people in this industry. And if time is money, and we know it is, the time you don't have to spend educating vendors on what you do and what you can and cannot say is time that can be spent doing something awesome. Because how you build your identity, how you are positioned on the web, and how you showcase your expertise in the media must be precisely crafted. FICOM develops winning communication strategies through a balanced approach that fuels growth, adds value, and sets their clients apart. So, visit ficompartners.com/XYPN radio and let's do something awesome. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.